Today we are going to learn about the history of the periodic table. Our question of the day is, what are some patterns in nature that you already know of? So let's go back in time to 1863. There were 56 known elements, and they were being discovered at about a rate of one per year. At this time, each element and its information was listed on a card, kind of like an element trading card. And these cards were carried around in a box, like a deck of cards. And it was starting to get difficult to keep up with all of them. Then came along a chemistry professor named Dmitri Mendeleev, which found that his students had issues keeping their elements straight. So he ended up organizing the elements in order of their atomic mass. When all of the elements were listed out in order by their mass, Mendeleev found a very strong pattern in their reactivity. The pattern was cyclic or periodic, which means it repeated every so often. The image on the right is actually cross-classified, which means that members of the same group, the same column, will have a pattern. And members of the same period or row also have a pattern. So in this example, all of the columns have the same shape and all of the rows have the same color. Dmitri Mendeleev actually cross-classified the elements, which made a new period each time the pattern started over. For example, all the squares react violently with water, and all the circles form diacidic bases. You don't need to know what that means. Just know that they share some reactivity. Mendeleev actually noticed a really strong pattern in these elements. And his periodic pattern was so significant that when there were missing pieces in the sequence, he left an empty space. At the time, gallium had not been discovered, so he named gallium Ica aluminum, meaning one from aluminum, before it was discovered. He knew, based on the pattern, that an element fitting his outline properties would be discovered one day, and it would fit perfectly in his table. And it did. This guy was a periodic table fortune teller. Now, Dmitri Mendeleev's table is the basis for the periodic table we use today, except now our table is organized by atomic number, not atomic mass. Our modern periodic table has 7 periods because there are 7 energy levels that have been discovered. What do you think the classification for the groups is by? Think back to what we were doing yesterday. Pause the video and do the show what you know questions. So, vertical columns on the periodic table are called groups, and horizontal rows are called periods. Cross-classification means that members of the same row and the same column have similarities. Dmitri Mendeleev's version of the periodic table was organized in order of atomic mass. The modern periodic table, however, is organized in order of atomic number. And Mendeleev was so confident in his periodic pattern that when an element was missing, he left empty space because he knew the element hadn't been discovered yet. And he was right. Members of the same group have the same number of valence electrons on the periodic table, and members of the same period have the same number of energy levels.